The crystal flute slipped from Diana's manicured fingers as her words registered in my brain. It's just that, well, we have some very important guests coming. The governor, several CEOs. Her voice dropped to a stage whisper. We can't have anyone feeling uncomfortable. I gripped my office chair, leather creaking beneath my fingers as the Manhattan skyline gleamed through floor-to-ceiling windows behind me. The phone call I'd been expecting for days had finally arrived. My own cousin was uninviting me from our family reunion at my own hotel. By anyone, I said. You mean yourself? Don't be dramatic, Olivia. It's just that the Starlight Grand is quite exclusive. The required attire alone. She trailed off, the implication clear. Her poor hotel clerk cousin couldn't possibly afford to attend. The irony burned like acid. Diana had no idea she was speaking to the owner of not just the Starlight Grand, but 16 other luxury hotels across 3 continents. My name is Rose, I'm 32, and I built a hotel empire while my family thought I was cleaning rooms. This is the story of how I made them finally see me. For 10 years, I'd endured their condescension. A hotel clerk? My father had roared when I graduated from Cornell's hotel administration program. No daughter of mine will wear a name tag and carry luggage. The memory of his flushed face still made my stomach tighten. I see, I kept my voice neutral. And who chose the venue? I did, of course. Pride saturated Diana's voice. Uncle Thomas says I have excellent taste. The Starlight Grand is the most prestigious hotel in Manhattan. She paused for effect. I had to pull some serious strings to book it for our reunion. I bit back a laugh. Diana hadn't pulled any strings. Her request had come through our regular booking channels, and I'd personally approved it last week after marking up the rate by 30%. That must have been difficult, I said mildly. Well, not everyone has my connections. The owner, R.C. Taylor, is notoriously private, but her staff was quite accommodating once they heard the Morrison name. Of course they were. I'd instructed them to be. Anyway, Diana continued, I'm sure you understand. Perhaps next year, if your situation improves. Are you still working at that little hotel in Brooklyn? The little hotel she referred to was actually my innovation lab, where I developed the service systems that had revolutionized the luxury hospitality industry. But the Morrisons had stopped paying attention to my career years ago. Something like that, I replied. After hanging up, memories washed over me in suffocating waves. Every family gathering where I'd been seated at the far end of the table. Diana's wedding 3 years ago, where she'd seated me with the catering staff, telling everyone it was so I'd feel more comfortable with my own kind. The countless times my achievements were dismissed as playing with hotels, while my cousin's mediocre accomplishments in finance were celebrated. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant, Nate. The Morrison family reunion contract needs your final signature. Shall I bring it up? I smiled, typing back. No need, I have plans for this one. Opening my laptop, I began making arrangements. If my family wanted to ban me from the reunion for being too poor, they were in for quite a surprise. The Starlight Grand was about to host a revelation none of them would ever forget. My sister Jillian called just as I was finalizing the arrangements. Rose, Diana called me. She said she had to uninvite you from the reunion. I'm so sorry. Don't be, I replied, signing the last document with a flourish. Actually, I have a favor to ask. Could you make sure everyone arrives exactly at 7 p.m.? It's important. Why? What are you planning? Let's just say Diana isn't the only one with connections at the Starlight Grand. I'll tell them there's a special welcome reception with complimentary champagne that ends promptly at 7:15, Jillian said, immediately catching on. No one in this family has ever turned down free luxury. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. I personally supervised every detail from the menu to the floral arrangements. The Morrison family wanted luxury. I would give them a show they'd never forget. The night before the reunion, I stood in the hotel's grand lobby watching the staff polish every surface to a mirror shine. The crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the marble floors gleamed like sheets of ice. Everything was perfect. Nate appeared at my side, tablet in hand. All arrangements are in place. The new signage will be unveiled at exactly 7:15 p.m. tomorrow. He hesitated. Are you sure about this? I nodded, thinking of Diana's condescending phone call, of years of subtle and not so subtle humiliation. Absolutely sure. After all, it's not every day I get to welcome my family to my hotel. I smiled, imagining their faces when they realized the truth. Tomorrow would change everything, and I was ready. At precisely 6:45 p.m. on the evening of the reunion, I stood in my private office on the top floor of the Starlight Grand, watching the Morrison family arrive through the security feeds. They came in waves of designer clothes and expensive jewelry, each trying to outshine the other. Diana swept in wearing Valentino, directing staff like she owned the place. My father's Bentley pulled up to the valet station, followed by a stream of luxury cars carrying aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't seen in years. Everything's ready, Nate said, adjusting his tablet. The staff knows their cues. Should I have security on standby? I shook my head. No need. The Morrisons care too much about appearances to make a scene in public. I smoothed down my custom-made suit, Armani, though they wouldn't expect me to know the difference. Let's give them time to settle in. Through the cameras, I watched my family members gather in the grand ballroom. Diana held court near the champagne fountain, loudly explaining how she'd pulled strings to secure the venue. My father stood with his business associates, probably discussing the latest banking merger. Even my distant cousins were there, all carefully positioned to show off their perceived status. At 7:10 p.m., right on schedule, the hotel manager approached Diana with the first hint that something was amiss. Ms. Morrison, I'm afraid there's been a slight issue with the reservation. Diana's face darkened. What kind of issue? I personally arranged everything with your corporate office. Yes, ma'am. It's just that the owner has some specific requests regarding tonight's event. The owner? Diana laughed dismissively. I seriously doubt R.C. Taylor concerns herself with individual events. Now, if you'll excuse me... Actually, I said, stepping into the ballroom, R.C. Taylor concerns herself with quite a lot of things. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. Every head turned toward me. The uninvited relative, the family embarrassment, standing in the doorway of Manhattan's most prestigious hotel, wearing a suit that cost more than Diana's car. Rose? My father's voice carried across the room. What are you doing here? Diana said I couldn't afford to attend. I finished for him, walking slowly into the center of the room. She was concerned I might embarrass the family. Diana stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. This is a private event. I'll have security remove you. No, I cut her off. You won't. On cue, Nate pressed a button on his tablet. The massive screen behind the stage lit up with the hotel's logo, and beneath it, my full name, Rose Charlotte Morrison Taylor, founder and CEO, R.C. Taylor Hotels International. The gasps were audible. Diana's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. That's not possible, she stammered. Would you like to see my business cards? I asked sweetly. Or perhaps the deed to the building. I have those right here. I patted the leather portfolio under my arm. My father pushed through the crowd, his face a mix of shock and something else. Was it pride? You own the Starlight Grand? And 16 other properties across 3 continents, I confirmed. Though this one is special. It's where I started my career as a junior housekeeper while all of you were laughing at my foolish career choice. The memory surfaced again. Diana mocking my name tag, my aunts whispering about wasted potential, my cousins excluding me from family photos because I didn't fit the image. All those years, I continued, my voice carrying in the stunned silence. While you were so busy looking down on me, you never bothered to look up to see what I was building. The little hotel in Brooklyn Diana loves to joke about. It's my innovation lab, where we develop the systems that have revolutionized the luxury hotel industry. Nate stepped forward, distributing folders to key family members. Inside, you'll find the true story of R.C. Taylor Hotels, along with documentation of your rather interesting booking for tonight's event. Diana snatched her folder, her hands shaking as she opened it. Her eyes widened at the numbers. This can't. The rate we charged you is about 30% above our standard fee, I confirmed. Consider it a family discount in reverse. My sister Jillian burst out laughing from somewhere in the crowd. Others joined in nervously, unsure whether they were allowed to find humor in the situation. "Why didn't you tell us?" my father demanded. "Would you have believed me?" I asked simply. 10 years ago, you told me no daughter of yours would ever work in a hotel." I let that sink in before adding, "Well, you were right about one thing. I don't work in a hotel, I own them." The screens around the ballroom came to life, showing images of my properties around the world. The sunset view from our Maldives resort, the snow-capped peaks surrounding our Swiss chateau, the glittering skyline visible from every room of our Dubai tower. "As for tonight's reunion," I continued, "your reservation hasn't been canceled. You're welcome to stay. In fact, I've arranged a special tour of the property. I think it's time you saw what a career in customer service really looks like." Diana stepped forward, her composure cracking. "Rose, we never meant—" "Yes, you did," I cut her off gently. "You meant every snide comment, every exclusion, every moment of mockery. But that's okay, because while you were all so busy maintaining appearances, I was building something real." I turned to the assembled crowd, raising my voice slightly. "Welcome to the Starlight Grand. My staff will show you to your upgraded suites, though I'm afraid Diana's room had to be downgraded due to a last-minute VIP booking." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Diana's face flushed deep red as she realized she'd be staying in the same category of room she'd once mocked me for cleaning. As the family dispersed, guided by my impeccably trained staff, my father lingered behind. "I was wrong," he said quietly, "about everything." I studied him for a moment, seeing for the first time uncertainty in his eyes. "Yes, you were. But would you like to know the best part about owning 17 hotels, Dad?" He raised an eyebrow questioningly. "I have 17 different presidential suites where you can stay while you figure out how to make things right." A small smile cracked his serious expression. "Where did you learn to negotiate like that?" "Probably the same place I learned about hospitality, by starting at the bottom and working my way up, something this family never understood." Later that night, after the tours were complete and the family had settled into their rooms, Diana's notably smaller than the others, I stood in my private penthouse looking out over the city. Nate brought in the final numbers for the evening. "Your family seems subdued," he observed. I laughed. Amazing what a little perspective can do. Did you see Diana's face when she realized her room doesn't have a city view? "Are you going to tell them about the expansion? The new properties in Paris and Tokyo?" I smiled, thinking of the contracts sitting on my desk. The Starlight Grand was just the beginning. Let's save something for next year's reunion. After all, every good hotelier knows the importance of repeat business. As the city lights twinkled below, I thought about the long journey from that first day as a housekeeper to this moment. Success wasn't about proving them wrong, it was about proving myself right. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a complimentary upgrade and a spectacular view. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "Can we talk tomorrow?" "Please." I smiled, remembering how she'd kept my number in her contacts all these years, probably to have someone to look down on when she needed an ego boost. I typed back a simple response. "Of course. I believe your breakfast reservation is at 9 a.m. I own that restaurant too." Sometimes the greatest luxury isn't in the thread count of the sheets or the height of the ceiling. It's in the simple pleasure of finally being seen for who you really are. And as I looked out over my hotel empire, I knew that tomorrow would bring a new chapter in the Morrison family story. After all, every great hotel knows that the key to success isn't just in providing a room, it's in creating an experience they'll never forget. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The screen of my laptop cracked beneath my father's boot with a sound like breaking bones. 5 years of research, my thesis, my future, all of it splintered across our kitchen floor. My breath caught as I watched him grind his heel into the keyboard. Plastic keys popped off like tiny casualties. "This house doesn't serve leeches," Dad growled, his face flushed with triumph, "and leeches don't get futures." Behind him, my sister Olivia's laughter peeled through the room as she recorded everything on her phone. Her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Oops, looks like Miss Perfect doesn't have anything to submit now. Should have saved it to the cloud. Genius." My knees hit the floor as I reached for the mangled remains. 3 days until submission, 3 days until graduation, 3 days that now stretched before me like an eternity. My name is Rachel. I'm 24 and a biomedical engineering student. This is the story of how I rebuilt my future from the ashes they tried to bury me in. I grew up in a home where success was treated like betrayal. Every textbook I brought home was met with my father's contempt. Every good grade was met with my sister's scorn. "You think you're better than us, huh?" Dad would say, shirt stained with auto shop grease, voice slurred from his third beer. "Walking around with your fancy words and typing like you're about to invent the cure to broke." Olivia had dropped out of high school twice, gotten pregnant at 17. Each time my parents rolled out the red carpet and called it a blessing. She got a car. I got a bus pass. She got a baby shower. I got told I was too selfish to even give them grandkids. And now, when I was this close to graduating top of my class, the hatred in our house had thickened like smoke. It clung to my skin. They didn't want me to finish. I'd been guarding my laptop like it was a newborn, knowing they were waiting for their moment. That evening, I'd come home from my coffee shop shift, stomach growling, spine aching, wrists sore from pouring lattes, only to find the entire house dark except for the living room. A strange silence crawled down my back as I entered. Olivia sat on the couch, Dad stood behind her, and my laptop lay destroyed on the floor. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there listening to the sound of my own breath rattling through my chest. There were 2 options: break or build something stronger from the ashes. Slowly, I gathered the broken pieces. My hands trembled, but I didn't make a sound. Not a curse, not a sob, nothing. My silence made Olivia uncomfortable. She wanted a reaction. "Oh, come on, don't go mute on us now," she said, leaning forward. "Don't be a drama queen. You're not even bleeding." That's when I looked up and smiled. The first time I'd smiled in weeks, because I knew something she didn't. My project didn't just live in that laptop anymore. It lived in my head, in every sketch memorized, in every calculation tattooed on my brain through sleepless nights. I could rebuild it, but I wouldn't just rebuild my project. I would rebuild everything, and they would regret ever touching me. The next morning, I left without speaking, not because I was scared, but because I needed silence to plan. They thought I'd vanish, cry for an extension, or spiral like Olivia used to when she didn't make cheerleading tryouts. Instead, I walked straight to the university's lab building. My fingers were still bruised from gathering what remained of my thesis, but I had more than they knew. Backup fragments saved in the school's simulation drive. Not the full draft, but the structure, the spinal prototype blueprints, enough to resurrect something powerful. I'd been backing up portions of my work on the university server each week, knowing my laptop wasn't safe at home. Dr. Ellis, my advisor, looked up as I entered her office. She squinted, noticing the swelling above my temple where the laptop had struck, and her face fell. "Oh my God, Rachel, what happened?" I shook my head. "I just need access to the lab this week. I'm rewriting my thesis." She stared at me for a long second. "You have 72 hours left." "That's more than enough," I lied. For the next 2 days, I didn't sleep. I lived in that lab, rebuilding everything I could from memory. The structural physics, the medical applications, the visual simulations. I didn't just rewrite it, I upgraded it. By the 3rd day, my hands were numb from coding and modeling. My hair hadn't been brushed. My shirt smelled like burnt coffee and fear, but I submitted it. Then I collapsed under the desk and slept for 6 hours straight. When I woke up, I had 24 missed calls, 22 from Olivia, 2 from Dad. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked out of the lab and straight to a cheap downtown motel. My back hurt. My eyes throbbed. But I'd done it. I had withdrawn the emergency funds I'd been saving from my coffee shop job, knowing I might need to leave someday. Then came presentation day. I walked into the hall where each student defended their work before a panel of professors, doctors, and invited industry experts. Most students wore crisp suits and heels. I wore a black sweater with holes in the sleeves, my shoes scuffed, my voice cracking when I introduced myself. But when I clicked the first slide, everything changed. I spoke like someone who'd lived it, not just studied it. I explained how prosthetic spinal columns were inaccessible in low-income and rural areas. I walked through the polymer materials, the adjustable hinges, the cost efficiency. I showed animations, projections, and ended with my most important slide, a drawing I'd made at 2 a.m. in the motel, scrawled in the corner of a napkin and later digitized. It showed a little girl, stick figure thin, standing upright in a hospital corridor, wearing a paper gown and a mechanical brace down her back. The room went silent, and then the applause started. I didn't just pass. I won the dean's thesis honor. My name was added to a research fellowship board. 3 days later, I finally went home. When I walked into the house, Olivia was standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed, eyes bloodshot, phone shaking in her hand. "You made me look like a joke!" she screamed. I blinked. "What?" She shoved her phone in my face. "Do you know what it's like to have your friends tagging you under a university's social media post? Your sister's a genius. OMG, we stand Rachel. What the hell do you think that makes me look like?" "Unemployed," I said quietly. She lunged at me, but I stepped back. "Touch me," I whispered, "and I'll get you arrested." That stopped her. Not because she believed I would, but because I'd never said anything like that before. Dad stormed in. "Where the hell have you been?" I turned slowly to face him. "Winning," he scoffed, his face reddening. "This house doesn't care about your trophies. You still live here, still breathing our air, still eating our food." That was when I handed him an envelope. He opened it. A check for $10,000. "What's this?" he barked. "Rent," I said, "for the last 2 years, every month, adjusted for utilities, taxes included. I calculated your grocery spend, too." He looked at me like I'd spoken in Latin. "And now," I continued, "you'll never say I owe you anything again." I grabbed my old coat from the hanger. My mother peeked out from the hallway. She'd said nothing the whole time, as usual, watching like she wasn't part of the cruelty. "I got a job offer," I said. 6 figures, medical design, full benefits." "Where?" Olivia spat. I smiled. "Across the country?" "Wait." But I didn't wait. I walked out, got into the cab I'd called before entering the house, and as we pulled away, I saw Olivia slam the front door and Dad kick over a chair like a toddler who'd just lost a toy. But it wasn't over yet. 3 weeks later, I sent them a package. Small, brown, labeled in thick black marker. "From your leech." I had kept their address in my contacts, knowing I would need it for this final message. Inside was my first published medical journal article, my prototype now under research funding. Taped to the front was a sticky note. "You smashed my future, so I built another." They didn't respond. Of course they didn't. People like them who feed off your silence and then choke when you speak never know what to do when you rise. They just wait for your failure, for your next apology, for your next please. But none of that came. 6 months passed. Then one morning, as I sipped black coffee in my new apartment, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of real life, not the boxed-in ceiling of that house, I got a call. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A minute later, a voicemail pinged. It was Olivia. Her voice was shrill, breathless, like she'd been running. "Rachel, Dad lost his job. Mom's sick. Like, actually sick, not faking for drama. I know we weren't great to you, okay? But you need to come back. We need you. Just please call me back." I played it again, then deleted it. The next week, I got an email from my old high school. One of the teachers who'd once written me off as too distracted wanted me to speak at the school's Women in STEM Day. I almost declined, but something told me this was part of it, the final twist. I arrived in a modest black dress holding nothing but a flash drive and a calm smile. They called me doctor. Rachel now, not the weird one. Not the girl who talks too much in physics class. Not the one whose family never shows up. The moment I stepped onto the gymnasium stage, my eyes flicked to the second row, and there they were. Mom, Olivia, even Dad. I hadn't told them I was coming. Someone must have shared the flyer online. Olivia still had alerts set up with my name on social media, tracking my achievements the way she once tracked my failures. Mom looked older, her hair grayer, not dyed to match Olivia's anymore. Dad had gained weight but somehow looked smaller. And Olivia, she looked hollow, not broken, just empty, like she'd run out of people to be better than. I didn't flinch. I began my speech. Good morning. My name is Dr. Rachel Michaels. When I was 17, I was told I wasn't built for brilliance. I was told that being creative made me unfocused, that asking questions made me difficult, that standing out made me less. I paused. My eyes scanned past them. I spoke to the girls in the room. What I wasn't told was that those things were power, that the people who try to make you feel small are usually terrified of what you'll become when you finally realize how big you are. Applause. Olivia shifted in her seat. Dad scratched his neck. When I was preparing my final thesis, someone destroyed it, physically smashed it, tried to convince me that I'd never make it out, that my future was disposable. I rebuilt it in 72 hours, not because I'm special, but because I was done letting people write my ending. I didn't need to say names. They knew. After the speech, I shook hands and took photos with little girls who held science kits and sketch pads. When I left the building, they were standing by the parking lot, all three of them. Olivia looked like she wanted to cry. Mom opened her mouth first. Rachel, honey, can we talk? I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see a mother. I saw a woman who let her daughter be treated like waste because it made her favorite child feel bigger. No, I said simply. Dad stepped forward. We were wrong, but families fix things. I stared at him, then reached into my coat pocket. I handed him a small flash drive. What's this? He asked, frowning. My new patent. It's going into production next year. I want you to see what it looks like when someone creates a future worth more than yours ever was. His hands trembled as I turned away. Olivia called out, I'm sorry, okay? I was jealous. I still am. You became what I never could. I didn't stop walking. I just whispered back without turning around. You had my parents. You had the house. You had the lies. And I still won. That night, I lit a single candle in my apartment. No party, no revenge blog, no news article. Just peace. Revenge wasn't about watching them suffer. It was about knowing they'd spend the rest of their lives remembering the day I stopped begging and started building. The day the leech stopped feeding and became the cure. Before you go, here's a quick deal for audiobook lovers. Your first month is completely free with thousands of titles available. All the details are in the description. Don't miss this opportunity. The air in the hospital room thinned as Dr. Gregory's expression shifted. My husband Nicholas gripped my hand with artificial concern, his wedding band digging into my skin. It was just an accident, right, Olivia? His voice carried a warning edge that made the nurse glance up from her clipboard. I stared at the ceiling, each breath igniting fire across my fractured ribs. 3 hours earlier, my mother-in-law Vanessa had stood at the top of our staircase, her lips curled into a smile I'd never forget, and pushed me with both hands. The impact of each hardwood step had painted my body with bruises that now bloomed beneath my hospital gown like a violent garden. Tell them you tripped, dear, Vanessa urged, her designer handbag clutched against her cashmere sweater, voice dripping with manufactured concern. You've always been somewhat clumsy. My name is Olivia. I'm 34 and a former interior designer. This is the story of how I turned a murder attempt into liberation. The monitor beside me beeped steadily as I remembered the moment with perfect clarity. I'd been carrying laundry upstairs when Vanessa appeared at the top, having let herself in with the key Nicholas had given her despite my repeated objections. Our argument about her unannounced visits escalated quickly. This is my son's house, she'd sneered, stepping closer. "You're just the replacement wife. The first one knew her place." Before I could respond, her manicured hands connected with my shoulders. The push wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, calculated, and accompanied by a satisfied smile that now haunted me from across the hospital room. Mrs. Reynolds, the nurse, whose name tag read Heather, interrupted my thoughts. "I need to examine your injuries privately. Hospital policy." She gave Nicholas and Vanessa a pointed look. "I'm her husband," Nicholas protested, his jawline tightening. "And you both need to wait outside," Heather finished firmly. "Now, please." Once they left, Heather's professional demeanor softened. "Olivia, I need you to be honest with me. These injuries are consistent with a fall, but the pattern suggests you were pushed. Did someone push you?" I hesitated. Nicholas would never believe me over his mother. Vanessa had spent the last 3 years systematically undermining me, and my husband remained willfully blind to it all. "I have proof," I whispered, surprised by my own courage. Heather leaned closer. "What kind of proof?" "Security cameras." My voice grew stronger. "I installed them 2 months ago after my jewelry started disappearing. I hadn't told Nicholas about them. I needed to know what was happening when I wasn't home. The stairs are covered by one of the cameras." Heather's eyes widened. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to my phone. I nodded, pulling up the security app with my uninjured hand. The footage was crystal clear. Vanessa's face twisted with malice, her hands extending, the deliberate push. My fall was brutal to watch, but what happened next was worse. Vanessa stood at the top of the stairs, watching me lie motionless at the bottom before calmly walking down, stepping over my body and making herself a cup of tea in my kitchen. She'd waited 15 minutes before calling Nicholas, and only then did she call for an ambulance. "Oh my God," Heather whispered, her professional composure cracking. "Olivia, I need to make a call. This is attempted murder." "Nicholas won't believe it," I said softly. "He never does." "He won't have a choice this time," Heather replied, her jaw set. "I'm calling the police. This isn't just domestic abuse. She waited before getting you help. She wanted you to be seriously injured." As Heather stepped out, I heard Vanessa's voice in the hallway. "Nicholas, darling, maybe we should look into putting Olivia in therapy. These accusations about me, her paranoid behavior with those cameras, it's not healthy." "I know, Mom." Nicholas's response made my heart sink. "Once she's better, we'll get her the help she needs." I closed my eyes, tears sliding down my cheeks. 3 years of gaslighting, of having my things moved or broken with Nicholas, telling me I must have misplaced them, of Vanessa's snide comments and Nicholas's dismissals. But this time was different. This time I had proof. Heather returned with 2 police officers. Through the small window in my hospital room door, I saw Vanessa's perfectly composed face crumble as they approached. Nicholas looked confused, then angry as one officer took out a notebook. "Mrs. Reynolds," Heather said, holding my phone, "would you like to press charges?" I took a deep breath, ignoring the pain in my ribs. "Yes," I said firmly. "Yes, I would." Vanessa's indignant screech echoed through the hallway as the officers began questioning her. "This is ridiculous. Nicholas, tell them. Tell them your wife is unstable." But Nicholas wasn't looking at his mother. He was staring at my phone screen, watching the footage play out in horrible clarity. His face had gone pale, his hands trembling as he watched his mother, the woman he'd always defended, try to kill his wife. The next few days passed in a blur of police statements, medical examinations, and uncomfortable silences. I was released from the hospital with strict instructions to rest and a prescription for pain medication that made the world feel slightly fuzzy around the edges. Nicholas insisted I come home, but I chose to stay with my sister Julia instead. After being discharged, Julia drove me to her house on the other side of town where I'd be staying during my recovery. "He let her have a key to your house without asking you," Julia fumed as she helped me settle into her guest room. "And he's been defending her behavior for 3 years. Olivia, I knew it was bad, but this—" I watched her arrange my medications on the bedside table, thinking about the past 3 years. The missing jewelry that Vanessa had claimed I must have misplaced. The family heirlooms that disappeared when she visited, only to show up in her house as things Nicholas gave her. The constant comments about my housekeeping, my cooking, my appearance, all met with Nicholas's standard response. "Mom's just trying to help." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Nicholas. "Please come home, we need to talk about this. Mom's been arrested and they're treating her like a criminal." "She is a criminal," Julia snapped, reading over my shoulder. "She literally tried to harm you intentionally." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. The evidence was damning. Not just the security footage, but the hospital records showing Vanessa's deliberate delay in calling for help. The detective assigned to my case, a no-nonsense woman named Detective Reyes, had more questions. She'd given me her card at the hospital and called me the day after I was discharged to arrange a meeting at the police station. "Mrs. Reynolds, we found something interesting while executing the search warrant at your mother-in-law's house," she said, spreading photographs across the table. "Do you recognize these items?" My breath caught. Neatly laid out were all my missing possessions. My grandmother's sapphire necklace, my mother's pearl earrings, even my engagement ring from my first fiancé who had died in a car accident, something I'd tearfully searched for months ago. "She took them," I whispered. "All those times she said I was careless, that I lost things. We also found this." Detective Reyes slid another photo across the table. It was Vanessa's phone, open to a text conversation with Nicholas from 3 months ago. "Olivia's becoming a problem. She's not good enough for you. Remember Megan? She knew her place. We need to do something about this one." Megan, Nicholas's first wife, who had mysteriously fallen down the same stairs 5 years ago. She had survived, but moved away immediately after, divorcing Nicholas and refusing to speak to anyone about what happened. "We've contacted Megan," Detective Reyes said quietly. "She's willing to testify." The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about me. Vanessa had done this before. And Nicholas, had he known? Had he suspected? That evening, Nicholas showed up at Julia's house. I wasn't surprised. He'd been to holiday gatherings at her place and knew exactly where she lived. "Olivia, please," he said when I agreed to talk to him on the porch. "You have to understand. Mom, she's not well. She needs help, not jail. If you drop the charges—" "Did you know?" I interrupted. "About Megan? About what your mother did to her?" His silence was answer enough. "They found my things, Nicholas. Everything she stole. Everything you told me I was careless enough to lose." My voice was steady despite the trembling in my hands. "The police found her texts to you about me being a problem, about doing something about me." "I never thought she'd actually hurt you," he protested weakly. "She's my mother. And I'm your wife." The words burst out of me, years of suppressed anger finally breaking free. "You gave her a key without asking me. You dismissed every concern, every fear. You watched her steal from me, belittle me, break me down piece by piece, and you did nothing. You chose her over me every single time." "Olivia, no," I cut him off. "I'm done. The police are reopening Megan's case. Your mother is going to face consequences for what she's done, and so are you." "What does that mean?" I pulled an envelope from my pocket, papers my lawyer had drawn up that morning. "It means I'm pressing charges against your mother for attempted murder and theft, and I'm divorcing you for conspiracy and emotional abuse." He stared at the envelope, his face draining of color. "You can't do this. We can work this out once Mom gets help." "Your mother pushed me down the stairs and watched me lie there injured for 15 minutes before calling for help. And you?" I laughed bitterly. "You told me I needed therapy for being paranoid. Well, guess what? The cameras I installed proved I wasn't paranoid at all." I stood up, ignoring the pain in my ribs. "The detective found your mother's diary during the search of her home, Nicholas. Pages and pages about how she got rid of Megan, how she was planning to get rid of me, and your texts encouraging her protective behavior. You're not innocent in this." His face crumpled, the facade of concerned husband finally cracking. "I'll lose everything. My job, my reputation." "You should have thought about that before you chose your mother over your wife's safety. Twice." I turned to go back inside, then paused. "Oh, and Nicholas?" "I'm keeping the house. It turns out, attempting to harm your daughter-in-law is a great way to void any claim to property. Your lawyer can contact mine about the rest." I closed the door on his stunned face, leaning against it as Julia wrapped me in a gentle hug. "You did it," she whispered. "You're free." For the first time since my fall, I felt like I could breathe properly again. The truth was finally out, and neither Vanessa nor Nicholas could hurt me anymore. 6 months later, after a series of preliminary hearings and legal proceedings that had dominated my life since the incident, I sat in the courtroom watching Vanessa's carefully maintained composure crack as the judge delivered her sentence. 15 years for attempted murder, with additional charges for theft and the reopened case with Megan. The evidence had been overwhelming. The security footage, her diary detailing both attacks, and Megan's powerful testimony about her own experience. "She told me I was never good enough for her Nicholas," Megan had testified, her hands shaking but her voice strong. Then one day, after months of psychological abuse, she pushed me down those same stairs. When I tried to tell Nicholas, he said I was confused from the fall. I knew then I had to leave. Nicholas hadn't fared much better. His text messages and documented pattern of enabling his mother's behavior had led to charges of conspiracy and accessory after the fact. He'd lost his job at the law firm when the story broke, his reputation in shambles. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, with the judge granting me full ownership of our house and a substantial settlement given the circumstances. Nicholas had been sentenced to 5 years probation and mandatory counseling. As the bailiff led Vanessa away, she turned to look at me one last time. The hatred in her eyes was still there, but now it was tinged with something else. Defeat. She'd lost everything. Her freedom, her social standing, and most importantly, her control. "You did the right thing," Detective Reyes said, touching my shoulder gently as we left the courthouse. We'd exchanged phone numbers early in the investigation, and she'd become both a professional ally and supportive presence throughout the legal proceedings. "Your case has encouraged 3 other women to come forward about similar experiences with their mothers-in-law. You've started something important here." I thought about those other women as I drove home from the courthouse to my newly renovated house. The first thing I'd done after the divorce was replace the stairs, not out of fear, but as a symbol of reclaiming my space. The security cameras stayed, though, a reminder that trusting my instincts had saved my life. Julia had helped me redecorate, removing every trace of Vanessa's influence. The stolen items she'd taken from me now sat proudly displayed in my bedroom, each one a testament to my resilience. My grandmother's sapphire necklace caught the light as I passed my dresser, no longer hidden in Vanessa's jewelry box. The doorbell rang. Megan, right on time for our weekly coffee meeting. We'd formed an unexpected friendship during the trial, bonding over our shared experiences and recovery. After connecting through Detective Reyes during the investigation, we'd begun meeting regularly to support each other through the legal process. "The house looks amazing," she said, settling onto my new sofa. "So different from when we were trying to please her," I finished, handing her a cup of coffee. "I know, everything then had to be beige and proper. Now it's all about what makes me happy." Megan smiled, touching the bright throw pillow beside her. "I did the same thing after I left. Painted my whole apartment purple just because I could. Nicholas hated purple." We shared a knowing look, both understanding the small acts of rebellion that helped us reclaim our lives. "Have you heard?" Megan asked, pulling out her phone. "They're starting a support group for women with abusive in-laws. They want us to speak at their first meeting." I looked at the website she showed me. Breaking the Silence. Recognizing and responding to in-law abuse. The homepage featured resources, warning signs, and stories from survivors. "We should do it," I said, surprising myself with my enthusiasm. If I had known about other cases like ours, maybe I would have installed those cameras sooner. "Speaking of cameras," Megan grinned, "that security company that supplied your system? They want to feature your story in their new domestic safety campaign. Apparently, their sales of indoor security cameras have tripled since your case made the news." I laughed, thinking about how Vanessa had always hated technology. She would hate knowing she's become a cautionary tale. Later that evening, after Megan left, I stood in my kitchen. My kitchen decorated my way, organized my way. I felt a profound sense of peace. The local news had called my case a watershed moment in recognizing in-law abuse. But for me, it was simpler than that. I trusted my instincts, protected myself, and refused to be silenced. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Reyes. Another case today. Woman installed cameras after reading about you. Caught her mother-in-law tampering with her medication. She's safe now. Thought you'd want to know. In the months since the trial, Detective Reyes had kept me updated on similar cases, maintaining the professional relationship we'd developed during the investigation. I smiled, running my hand along my new countertop. Vanessa had always criticized my choice of home decor, but now every bright color and modern fixture felt like a victory. I learned that sometimes the happy ending isn't about forgiveness or reconciliation. Sometimes it's about breaking free, finding your voice, and helping others find theirs. The support group meeting was scheduled for next week. My story would be the first one shared, not as a victim's tale, but as a roadmap for other women. How to recognize the signs, how to protect yourself, and most importantly, how to reclaim your life. My security cameras blinked quietly in their corners, now less about protection and more about remembrance. They had given me back my power, my voice, and my future. In the end, Vanessa's attempt to silence me had only made me louder, stronger, and more determined to ensure no other woman would suffer in silence as Megan and I had. As I got ready for bed that night, I caught my reflection in the mirror and saw something that had been missing during my years with Nicholas and Vanessa. Peace. I was finally, truly free.